Hello guys, and welcome here to another edition of Out of Turn 4. Anyway, as we get going today, coming up on the show, we are going to discuss NASCAR at Darlington. We are going to recap those 3 races. We are also going to talk a lot of silly season, including some F1 news that came out today. You won't want to miss that. We haven't talked F1 in a while. And then, of course, we'll end it with our predictions for Richmond and for Portland this upcoming weekend. So with that, let's get going right away. Sheldon Creed, he is the winner of the Camping World Truck Race at Darlington. Of course, it's his second straight victory in the round of 10, entering an off week. And let's face it, he's hitting his stride at just the right time. Of course, keep in mind now 5 races to go in the truck season. He's already won 2 races in the playoffs. I think it shows that he is more than capable of competing for a championship this year, even though this season has been dominated by John Hunter Nemechek, but it's about getting hot late, of course. And he is hot late in the year, so I wouldn't put it past him that he could possibly repeat as the Camping World Truck Series champion. We'll have to see, of course, as we enter the final 5 races. In other news, though, and of course, speaking of getting hot late, how's about this name for Victory Lane in the NASCAR Xfinity Series? Noah Gragson. He holds off a late charging AJ Allmendinger. He holds off also the rest of the field, really, for that matter, for the win. Of course, the race really belonged to Denny Hamlin, but of course, a speeding penalty late and a pit road penalty late, rather, kind of took him out of the running. He did salvage a decent finish, but not the win as he was expected to do. And of course, keep in mind, I believe I had him as the pick last weekend. So, tough break for Hamlin. Of course, though, he made up for it on Sunday. Denny Hamlin held off Kyle Larson in a video game move by Kyle Larson. He rode the wall all through turns 3 and 4, did everything he could to get the win. He just couldn't get there, unfortunately, and Denny Hamlin will advance to the round of 12. He is the first driver to lock in. Of course, Larson had to settle for second, but that's not a problem for good old Kyle Larson. He now has an 80-point advantage in the playoffs. And of course, it was a bad race to be a playoff driver. Chase Elliott, Kyle Busch, others involved in some big wrecks at Darlington. And of course, just the story for Chase, honestly. Chase has always been involved in accidents over in Darlington. It sucks, honestly. But it is what it is there. Of course, playoff picture really shaken up. I believe McDowell's on the out right now. Reddick and Bowman are tied for the final spot, but they're giving it to Reddick. It should be given to Bowman because he does have more wins by a few actually. So I don't know what's up with that, but I saw that this week. Either way, great racing at Darlington. It looked like I hate that I had to miss it for a fantasy football draft, but hey, sacrifices, right? Priorities is more like it. Yeah, sorry I didn't stream that, by the way. It was just, didn't have the time to do it, and I was out with friends. So, but that's it for the recap. I know it was kind of quick. I didn't watch much racing this weekend. I'm hoping to watch a little more next weekend because there's no football, really, on Saturday. Other than college. I don't watch college football, obviously. But with that, let's move on to the silly season. I think this is where most of our talking points will come from here. Valtteri Bottas, of course. Keep in mind, he has been a longtime teammate for Lewis Hamilton over at Mercedes. He is on the move. He will be going to Alfa Romeo for 2022. And that confirms that Russell will likely be the new teammate for Lewis Hamilton at Mercedes. Let's face it, they've had their eye on Russell for a little bit now. And to be honest, Bottas has been rumored to get out of there a lot recently. He's kind of just been, I mean, I know it's only 2-car teams there, but he's been a weak link there for a while. They needed a driver's shakeup. They need someone who can compete at the level that Lewis Hamilton is. I'm wondering, though, I don't know if Russell's that guy necessarily. Say if it was Max Verstappen, I would say, yeah, oh boy, this would be something, but I don't think that's ever going to happen. So, but nonetheless, I think it's a decent move for Bottas, of course, though, with, again, that competition gap being so far in F1, I just don't see Bottas being a front runner week in and week out. Not saying he can't score points, but I'm just saying F1 is very far in terms of competition gaps compared to American auto racing. Again, you can tell me your thoughts on it, but that's just my thoughts on it. I've stated it multiple times here on Out of Turn 4, and today is no different. That's all I'm going to say. But anyway, moving on to the NASCAR side of things. Of course, JTG Doherty, the big news out of there, they will be going down to a 1-car team. Of course, they do not have a charter to sell. They currently own only one charter. The second charter was sold off to, I believe, Spire Motorsports, if I'm not mistaken. They have not announced a driver yet for the 47. It's heavily speculated, though, that Ricky Stenhouse Jr. will be returning to be the solo driver, meaning Ryan Preece is on the way out. And to be honest, Ryan Preece, it's hard for them it's hard for me to make a case really for either of those drivers to return. The only thing that would give me the edge if they were going to keep a driver in the stable, it would have to go to Ricky Stenhouse just because of the sponsorship status over there. I mean, he carries NOS Energy Drink with him, as well as a few other personal sponsors. So that said, obviously, the case is made for him to return over Ryan Preece, who does have Hunt Brothers Pizza, but he really doesn't have any personal sponsorship. This team has team sponsorship, which makes them a little bit different. But needless to say, I don't know. That would be my argument, I guess. They're going to bring back a driver. It should be Ricky Stenhouse, even though Stenhouse doesn't take care of equipment very well. Personally, I would have argued for Matty D to get that ride, but they've got a lot of issues over there. But yeah, him, Ryan Newman, I would have even argued for. I think Ryan Newman deserves a shot in that ride, and I think he can help them grow. Again, he's like Kurt Busch. He can help that team grow. So, again, I would have vouched for either of those two. The likelihood of that happening, though, I think is pretty slim, because I really do believe that Ricky Stenhouse, will return in 2022. I'm fully expecting that to happen, of course. Another team shutting down their organization at the end of the season, and it is Starcom Racing. Of course, they've been kind of... I know I pick on Rick Ware Racing a lot, and I really do, because they should delete their team, or at least downsize their team to 1 car. That's been my argument, honestly. Frankly, I say delete your team, but of course, the other big joke in the Cup Series of the last few years has been Starcom Racing. Of course, they have announced that they will be shutting down at season's end. Rumors have, or rather, it's been all but confirmed that they have already sold their charter. People are speculating that it is Spire Motorsports that has bought the charter for the 77 car. But also keep in mind, though, 2311 is looking for a charter right now. I know they've talked to Front Row Motorsports, but let's face it, I wouldn't rule out that they throw a curveball at us and say, oh yeah, we bought our charter from Starcom Racing. So I can't imagine that charter's that valuable, seeing that they haven't won a championship and they really haven't been the front runners of the charter teams in the last few years. Anywhere even close. I think they've been one of the bottom two, as a matter of fact. So why is Starcom shutting down? Because this is kind of random, but I point to one thing, and I hate to say it, but it's Quinn Houff. Quinn Houff is the main reason this team is shutting down. He didn't take care of his equipment, and he wasn't ready to go cup racing. Again, please, if anyone watches ARCA like religiously out there, can someone please explain to me what teams in the Cup Series saw in Quinn Houff? Did he have money? Is that what it was? Because it sure didn't look like he had the sponsorship. I mean, he ran for Spire in 2018. Didn't do so hot over there. 2019, one of those years, he ran over there. He didn't do so hot. It looked like he had a blank car quite a few times. So, what's the fascination with him? And what, unless they were saving on salary money, and that's why they got rid of Landon Castle. But, I mean, Landon Castle had this team trending in the right direction. And then they let him go, which made no sense. So, again, I just can't justify why Quinn Houff was the choice for that ride, considering he really didn't take care of his equipment at Spire. He didn't do well his rookie year, which begs me to question, why did he return this season? But it seems like now he'll be out of a cup ride, unless Spire picks him up, which I hope they don't. I think there's more talented drivers in the pool. But either way, we'll wait and see. Of course, if Spire does get the charter, maybe it's Matty D. I've heard rumors he might be headed to Spire Motorsports to pair up with Corey LaJoie. Maybe it's Ryan Newman. Maybe it's going to be a part-time effort with an Xfinity driver and a Cup veteran. Maybe it's or some road course vets and whatnot. Maybe it's a shared effort all around. Maybe Matty D's running a couple races for him next year. Maybe Josh Berry is going to run some races. Who knows? Really, Spire has been awful quiet when it comes to the 2022 news. So I fully expect that Corey LaJoie is going to return. But as far as the rest of them, I just don't know. I mean, we know for a fact that Justin Haley's not returning next year. He's going to Colleague. So, again, I just question. Excuse me. But yeah, I just don't know where they're going with this, to say the least. More curveballs as we look at IndyCar. By the way, can I just say that IndyCar this off season, oh boy, this is going to be interesting because, of course, we don't know where Simon Pagenaud is going. We don't know where Jack Harvey's going. We know nothing about Takuma Sato. Rahal Letterman Lanigan's going to have rides open. Team Penske might have one ride open. Ed Carpenter Racing might be clearing house. We don't know what's going on with AJ Foyt Racing yet. There is so many questions that have yet to even be answered. And it's so interesting. I mean, at least in the Cup Series the last few months, we've had hints of what was going to happen. We've kind of known since, I would say, April or May, maybe sooner, that Brad Keselowski was going to go to Roush Fenway. We've kind of known, it's been hinted since about May or June, that Kurt Busch was going to drive a second car for 2311. This was before Chip Ganassi sold their team. Of course, that was a bombshell development. But, we've kind of known those two stories. We really haven't heard much noise in the IndyCar series, to say the least. It's been all quiet. Very quiet. But, of course, there was some news a few weeks ago. June Coast Racing will be returning to IndyCar competition. They will pilot a 77 car full-time in 2022. Well, guess what? They're going to be getting their feet wet this year. They have hired former F2 championship runner-up driver Callum Allott. I hope I pronounced that name right, by the way. He will drive for Juncos Hollinger Racing at Portland. Of course, it's a one-off deal. If he's anything like Christian Lundgaard was in the 45, he's going to be good in that car. But again, kind of a last-second thrown-together deal. This is kind of just a race where I think as much as it's an audition for Callum, it is also really their chance to get a taste for IndyCar and get a taste for what they want to do in 2022 setup-wise, mechanics-wise, all that. I think this is more a test drive for them. Kind of get a head start on 2022. So I don't have high expectations for this team, to say the least. But again, a lot could be scary. That I could say. If Lundgaard was quick in the 45, he could be just as good. But speaking of the 45, by the way, Oliver Askew has been announced as the driver of the number 45 for Rahal Letterman Lanigan Racing, with Hy-Vee as the sponsor for the final 3 races of 2022. And again, Oliver Askew, there's no doubt his name is getting a lot of hype in IndyCar right now. Of course, he filled in for Rinus VeeKay for a race. He also, I believe, filled in for Felix Rosenqvist when he was out with a concussion, I believe it was, or some sort of, or whatever injury he had from the Detroit crash. So, of course, his name's been swirling kind of around IndyCar paddocks, as has Magnussen, as has Santino Ferrucci, amongst others. So, of course, it's no surprise Askew's going to get his shot here. This is without a doubt an audition. Of course, keep in mind, there may be 2 open slots over at Rahal Letterman Lanigan. We don't know the future of Takuma Sato. Maybe it is with the 29 team. Keep in mind as well, there's also the 29 cars open. The 60 car is open right now for Meyer Shank Racing right now. This is without a doubt an audition for him in the next 3 races. And of course, this is really his big chance to show that he belongs in the sport. Keep in mind, he's been running IMSA, I believe, for most of the year. So I wish him nothing but the best. I think he kind of got the raw end of the deal over at Arrow McLaren Schmidt Peterson. But looking at it, still, the 7 was struggling with him. They're struggling without him, too. So, needless to say, I don't think anyone won that deal, except for Chip Ganassi, who's got Alex Palou now. As far as his likelihood to end up in the 45, remains to be seen, to be honest. Of the drivers they've had, let's see, they've had Santino Ferrucci. Excuse me, allergies, by the way. Santino Ferrucci, of course, finished top 10 in all but 1 race. Excuse me. That he ran with the team. And then Christian Lundgaard ran at Indy, and he put down an insanely fast lap in qualifying. So he definitely has the pace to run an IndyCar. So, again, I think there's added pressure for him. But I don't feel like, his chances are out the door, to say the least. I don't think you can rule it out. I do think, though, his chances are kind of low, seeing that Jack Harvey's available, seeing that obviously Santino has run pretty well for them in multiple attempts. But I don't know. And then Lundgaard's qualifying pace, I think, did it for him as well. So, as well as kind of his race pace. So I just believe, honestly, it's possible, but I don't believe he's going to be their top candidate. I feel like if I had to put him in order, and I don't like doing this normally, but if I had to put it in order right now, I would say Ferrucci is without a doubt their top candidate right now of the guys who have driven. Keep in mind, I'm just going to point this out. I am listing them as the drivers who have competed for this team this season, not as, guys who haven't competed that are just free agents right now. This is guys that have competed in the 45 this season that I think have the best chance of landing the ride from best to worst. So far, I would say Santino Ferrucci's number one, but not by much. Because Santino, again, he ran well. I believe he got 6th place at the Indy 500. He's finished top 10 ever since, except for the one race where he finished 11th. But, again, his past, his desire to run NASCAR, his funding, those are 3 big questions that I just don't feel safe in saying there's an answer to. Of course, we know Hy-Vee will back his running for next year if he runs there, but again, it's still to be determined. And then, of course, Christian Lundgaard, that's why I say he's a close number 2. Again, a former FIA driver. He ran well in qualifying. He's shown that he might be able to win on these road courses. And again, for a team who wants to win, obviously every team wants to win. If they have the Chip Ganassi mentality, he might be their best chance at a win. I just haven't seen it from Ferrucci yet. Ferrucci's kind of the Matty D of the garage area in the way. I do hope Ferrucci gets the ride, though. I think Ferrucci should be an Indycar 100%. And then, of course, Oliver Askew. But I only rank Oliver Askew 3rd because he hasn't raced yet for them. That's the main reason why he's ranked 3rd. I want to see what he does in these next 3 races before I immediately jump ship and say, oh, he shouldn't have the ride. But I do believe he should get another shot in IndyCar. That I will, at bare minimum, say about that. Anyway, on to the picks for the weekend. Of course, let's start with Indycar Portland. I'm picking Pato Award for this race. I know Will Power won this race 2 years ago when they last ran at Portland. But again, I think Pato has got some momentum. I think he's got some confidence entering Portland, especially after taking over the points lead after the Gateway race. So I think he's got some momentum on his side, and I think he can make it work here. As far as the Xfinity Series at Richmond, my pick is AJ Allmendinger. I think, Colleague Racing is heating up late in the year, and because of that, my pick is AJ Allmendinger. I think, he will win the right. I think he's the biggest threat to Austin Cindric. And again, Colleague Racing is on a hot streak. They have had a very hot August. And will it translate to September? I think so. So, AJ Allmendinger's going trophy hunting. Then the Cup Series at Richmond, I'm going to pick Denny Hamlin here. And should I mention, of course, Denny Hamlin in controversy, but he is showing right now that he's going to put that controversy in the rearview mirror, of course, with his girlfriend. I won't comment on the details because there's really no confirmations as far as what's happened. So I won't comment on it on here. If you want to look it up, just look up Denny Hamlin and Jordan Fish, and you make the call if it's true or not. But I don't know what's going on, so that's why I don't comment on it. Anyway, with that, though, we want to say thank you for watching. Now we got some promo time. So let's start off with this. Tinkle Sports Talk, by the way, will be returning this Sunday. Jason and I will be back. We'll be kicking off the NFL season. We were supposed to have an NFL kickoff show tomorrow night over on Facebook and YouTube, But unfortunately, we are going to have to cancel. Jason and I, our schedules just didn't align, and we just didn't have the time to record. And because of that, I didn't want to host by myself. He didn't want to host by himself, so we just decided, let's scrap it. We'll do it on Sunday instead. So Sunday we will kick off the NFL season. We'll also talk some baseball, maybe a little bit of basketball if we have time, but of course, I think the main focus, like 90% of the focus, will be on the kickoff of the NFL season. So you won't want to miss it. We'll also have our recap of Tampa Bay and Dallas on Thursday night. Now that show will be returning again, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and we will be on Facebook Watch for the season premiere. It'll only be this Sunday that we are on Facebook Watch for now. So again, YouTube, Facebook Watch, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify. 5 locations you can check out Tinkle Sports Talk, and of course, YouTube and Facebook Watch are the live in-person, or not live, but on camera versions. So again, check out any of those 5 platforms. We will be back this Sunday after a month break. You won't want to miss it. And then of course, we end on a bit of a somber note. Of course, keep in mind, as we enter this race weekend, we are of course reminded of the tragedies that happened 20 years ago. Of course, I was only 5 when this happened, but the tragedies of 9/11, of course, our thoughts and prayers with the family of the victims, of course, any of the surviving victims, the New York Fire Department, the New York Police Department, and all of our first responders and military personnel. We want to thank you for your service, and of course, thank you for all that you have done throughout this crisis. Of course, 9/11 20-year anniversary. I believe ABC News is doing a special on it. I don't want to comment on, news sources or anything, but again, probably a few specials on it, of course. But again, once again, just going to leave it on this note, our thoughts and prayers with the families of victims impacted by 9/11. With that, though, we want to say thank you for watching, and we will see you back here. If you're not going to watch us on Sunday, we'll see you here next Tuesday with another edition of Out of Turn 4. Till then, guys, goodbye, everyone.